The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are simply that, opinions. All are presumed innocent until proven otherwise in a court of law. Sensitive topics are discussed. Discretion is advised.
I'm Vinnie Politan. The subject of my investigation is a teenager named Carly Gregg. She comes from a broken home and shared time with her mother and her father. In one house, the drugs and alcohol were flowing. In the other, things seemed much better until a fatal shooting. Here's the story. 14-year-old Carly Gregg was a really good student. In fact, she was Student of the Year at Northwest Rankin High School in Brandon, Mississippi. Carly's mom, Ashley Smylie, was a teacher at the school. For most moms, this would be an ideal situation, being close to your child who was excelling in school. But inside their home and inside the mind of Carly Gregg, everything wasn't okay. She was battling serious issues that seemingly manifested themselves one day inside the home. Carly allegedly armed herself with a gun and confronted her mother. She discharged that weapon 3 times, taking the life of her mother. Then, in a bizarre twist, she allegedly contacted a friend to come over and showed her her mom's dead body. Then, when her stepfather returned home, she fired the gun again, wounding him. He survived, and now everyone is wondering how and why this happened and what role mental health played in this tragedy. It's still hard to put together this 14-year-old who doesn't even look 14, seems so much younger, with what happened inside that home. But we know what happened inside that home because of home security video. That is a big part of uncovering the facts of this case and what happened. Now, I want to warn you, this is going to be somewhat graphic, what I'm going to show you right now, but this is the home video footage, and you'll see Carly Gregg like sneaking around into the kitchen. Then you'll see her leave, and then you're going to hear the shots that took her mother's life, and then you'll see what she did afterwards. Let's take a look. Looking at her, I mean, there's more reaction from the dogs than her, the way she's coming in and out. She doesn't say anything, but we can see this is the moment right after the gun is discharged, those shots that took her mom's life. So it brings me to my first question tonight, and it's about what we saw. What does Carly Gregg's body language reveal? And we begin in this situation, right after the shooting. Need my experts joining us tonight. Body language expert Rodney Smith and licensed mental health clinician and supervisor who specializes in trauma, abuse, and neglect, Sharonda Brown. Thank you both for being here. Rodney, what did you see? Especially in the, well, there's the before the shooting and there's the after. What did you see in the way she was comporting herself?
Well, initially, when she enters into the residence, she comes in with this act of being stealthy. She appears to know what she intends to plan to do. She walks in, she does the old left, right, goes in, recognizes where her mother is at the time, and then she goes into the bedroom. What I find very interesting is as she walked by, every time she is in possession of this handgun, she makes she is very clear and concise in concealing it and keeping it behind her. As she walks by the main area of what appears to be the kitchen dining area, and then when she comes back, she makes sure to conceal it behind her back as she places it on the stool behind her. One of the other things that I happened to look at that I was trying to take account of was her breathing rate. As she sat down, she seemed almost relaxed, as though she wasn't out of breath, as though like, oh my goodness, what have I done? There didn't seem to be a lot of anxiety. There didn't seem to be a lot of fear. And it just almost seemed to be a bit of a calmness to her, as though this was just something that I did. And I think when we use the terminology, who in their right mind would do something like that, it brings to question what state of mind was this individual in to be that calm in their demeanor.
Sharonda, I want to show you another piece of the home security footage. This is from the garage as her and her mother are arriving at the home. This is about 20 minutes before any of this has happened. They pull in here. And as we watch this, this is 20 minutes before the shooting. And everything appears so normal. What are you noticing, Sharonda, about the before and the after that we watched?
I'm noticing that if she is calm, meaning if she's big on image, meaning she had this other life, then she was playing along with what the expectation of her behaviors were. Because if there is a plan, and it sounds like her behaviors, it appears that her behaviors were planned, then she has to go along with the normalcy of what the routine is. So it falls in line with the expectation that everything's fine, because it doesn't sound like she wants her mom to be on guard. If she was, very impulsive, or if she was very excited, it probably would have given her mom some type of insight to, okay, let me be calm, let me be cool, let me see what's going on. But if things are normal, then there was nothing to be on guard about. And it seems like that's the picture she wanted to paint. Let's just be calm, let's be normal, so that I can carry out with this plan. It's what it seemed like.
All right, Sean, let me show you now afterwards when she is detained by police.
Yeah, let me get I got a cuff on her. I got her handcuffed. All right, sweetie. Look. Let me step out real quick for me. All right. Hey, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to move them around to the front of you, okay? I'm going to move the handcuffs around to the front of you. Okay. All right. All right, so what we're going to do here is we're going to swab your hands, okay?
Yeah.
Right. Well, I asked you a bunch of questions, but obviously you fired with a pistol, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
All right, look. I need you to hold your hand out like this. I'm going to do your right hand first, okay? That's your right hand. Keep your hand like that.
Swab up here. It's a GSR. It shows which hand did you shoot with? Which hand did you shoot with?
I'm going to go up. kids from me? I guess you can put it in my vehicle with my key. Key fob is out. Left pocket.
All right, so go ahead and take it. All right.
Is my stepdad okay?
I don't know, baby. I can't talk to you about this.
Here, I can show.
Are you okay?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Lisa, what, this is his home?
Can you take her up to the office on the interviewer?
Yeah.
And then afterwards, I guess, I don't know if you want to hang out or whatever, but Judge wants you to stay at JDC tonight. They've informed her what's going on. And then she'll be brought over to jail in the morning after she sees the judge.
She has no idea what even, she don't even know about her mom. Yeah, I know. She's like, it's my stepdad, okay?
Sharonda, are you seeing any sense of trauma in her, in the way she's acting and reacting in this situation here?
No, not in that clip. She seems very calm, very relaxed, very relieved. Like my colleague stated, I didn't pick up on any heavy breathing, and any type of explaining, any type of remorse. So I'm sorry, no fast talking. I didn't see or hear any of that. So it doesn't seem like there's much trauma, but sometimes with trauma, there is shock, and with shock, there is silence. So it's hard to say without actually sitting down and speaking to her, but actually looking at her, I don't see it. I can't say that I do.
My guests are staying with us. Coming up next, what exactly is the nature of Carly and Heath, her stepdad's relationship?
Do you and Carly still have a relationship?
Yes, I think we're good.
And how frequently do you and Carly talk?
Just about every day now.
Now, back to the Court TV podcast.
How would you describe your relationship with Carly?
All good. We've gotten along from the beginning. Hadn't really had any problems between us.
And do you have any other children?
No.
And would you say that you love Carly the same as you would a biological child?
Yes.
See that smile? That's Carly's stepfather, who's describing a good relationship with Carly, the one who shot his wife, killed her, shot him. He survived. I want you to take a listen to him describing what happened that day.
Tell the ladies and gentlemen exactly what you remember about when you came home on March the 19th, 2024.
Everything seemed pretty normal, and came on in, and when I opened the door to the kitchen there, gun went off in my face before the door was, I don't know, 3 or 4 inches wide open. And everything kind of went pretty fast from there. It was a blur, gun flash in my face, and then it went off 2 more times, but my hand was on the gun after the first shot, and I twisted it from her.
Who was pointing that gun at you?
It was Carly.
Who pulled the trigger when you opened the door?
The first one I know was Carly. After that, my hand was on the gun too, and I know I had a scratch on my thumb and all. I very well could have hit it. I know that third time.
Did you ever get struck by a bullet?
Yes, one of them kind of grazed right through this muscle up here.
Can you tell ladies and gentlemen what did that feel like?
I know this sounds weird, but I honestly have never felt it to this day. She was screaming out of her mind, scared. It was like she had seen a demon or something. She was terrified. And my first thought was there was an intruder somewhere, and she thought she was after somebody else.
And to be clear, Carly never told you that she thought somebody else was in the house, right?
No, that's the feeling that I got. She was terrified out of her mind.
You listen to his words. He everything he says has some sense of sympathy towards his stepdaughter, Carly. And what we've also heard, we just heard him talk about still having a relationship and speaking with her every day or almost every day. So that brings me to my next question, which is, what is the nature of Carly and Heath's relationship? The person that brought them together is dead because Carly shot her. That brought him into her life as a stepfather. Still with me, body language expert Rodney Smith and licensed mental health clinician and supervisor specializing in trauma, abuse, and neglect, Sharonda Brown. Sharonda, how do you see the nature of this relationship?
It could very well much be a parent-child relationship. What I know about people when they're grieving, especially with the parent who survives, they at times will fantasize about what's left, and they will begin to warm up to what's left. And in this case, it's his wife's child. And I think to have any type of anger towards her or frustration towards her, he could very well much see it as, oh, I'm having frustration towards my wife, or I'm having frustration towards someone who once loved me or even brought us together. So that happens a lot when people are grieving. So I think what could possibly be going on is that fantasy of grief right now with him. And he could be seeing that as, I want to keep this relationship positive because this is what I have left of my wife.
Rodney, I want you to take a look at a moment inside the courtroom. It's Heath Smylie on the stand and is looking at Carly, and they seem to exchange some sort of a smile. But I want you to take a look at both of them, and then after we watch it, let me know what you think and what you're getting from the body language inside that courtroom.
Do you see Carly in the courtroom, Heath?
Yes.
If you could you point her out?
Right there.
And could you tell me where at that table that you pointed at that she's sitting?
She's in between Mr. Camp and Miss Todd in black.
And is that the same person that shot you with that .357 Magnum on March the 19th, 2024?
Yes.
Okay, Rodney, what are you seeing there?
Well, at the beginning of the clip, when they ask, do you see her? She gives a slight smile, almost that of a micro expression, as though I'm glad that he acknowledges me and that he sees me. And when he gives the smile, she acknowledges and accepts that, which shows that they have this mirror neuron connection going on between the two of them. What I did find very interesting is when they ask, was she the one that shot you? He gives, you'll see it more so on his right cheek. He kind of does a small bit of a contemptuous eye roll as he closes his eyes, and you'll see that right cheek pull back as though, I really hate to say this, as holding the individual that asked him that question as though he holds them in contempt for asking that question. And yes, I do have to say this, and it was her. In addition to that, what I did find interesting was to kind of piggyback off the earlier clip where she was taken out of the patrol car when they were doing the GSR report off of her hands. She actually asked about her stepdad. She said, "How is my stepdad?" She didn't ask about her mom. So obviously they did have some type of connection. I've noticed some of the words that he used. He's almost defending her, showing some type of sympathy, where he says she was terrified. When he first said the gun was in my face, he didn't say she pointed the gun in my face. It was almost as though some of the pronouns were removed to take her out and acknowledge that the weapon did the firing, not so much as her. But in that last clip where he is asked about, and did she fire that weapon, you see that small bit of contempt on his right corner, as though, I hate to say this, but yes, she was the one.
I want to take a listen to Heath Smylie here, Sharonda, talking about Carly.
In all the time that you've known Carly, would you describe her as callous?
No.
Would you describe her as calculating?
No, except with math.
Would you describe her as diabolical?
No.
How would you describe Carly?
She's just a sweet little girl ever since I've known her. And, you know, even when we take her to the playground, instead of running around playing, a lot of times she would be pushing other kids on the swing and the little, I don't know what they're called, little roundabout things that kids get on and go in a circle. She'd be the one that'd be pushing groups of kids rather than her playing. She'd go find the younger ones to try to help take care of them, and she's just sweet.
Okay, Sharonda, what are you hearing here? They're talking about going to the park. Hopefully it's when she was 11, not 14, to play on the swings.
Well, I know in a lot of dynamics with families, there's this thing called triangulation. And that's where if you have one parent who is the disciplinarian or who is the enforcer of the rules, and the other parent who's the fun one and identifies more with the child, there is sometimes that connection in which they will team up, for lack of a better term, with the disciplinarian, and they become more like siblings than parent-child, if that makes sense. And it sounds like he had a lot of compassion for her, and it sounds like he was very into keeping her safe and remembering a time when she was just this child, and that part he seems to connect to a lot more for some reason.
We're out of time. Sharonda Brown, Rodney Smith, thank you so much. I'm Vinnie Politan. We'll keep digging for answers as the investigation continues. I'm Vinnie Politan. We continue our investigation of teenager Carly Gregg, who at the age of 14 was going through a difficult time. But because she was so sweet, her mom and stepdad never for a second thought that everything could break so bad. A fatal shooting and then a murder trial. Here's the story. How could this happen? Why did this happen? On this video, you see 14-year-old Carly Gregg inside her home. As she leaves the kitchen, she walks into her bedroom. She confronts and shoots her mother 3 times, taking her life. Then she invites a friend over and lures her stepfather to the home, pretending to be her dead mother in a text message. When her stepfather arrives, Carly shoots him too. But Heath Smylie survives and is now supporting Carly. It is a tragedy of epic proportions that still has so many unanswered questions. Wow. So you look at the story and it seems from what we're hearing that this was out of the blue. Heath Smylie, stepfather, wasn't expecting any of this. He describes her as a sweet girl. So it seems a lot of what's going on here may very well have something to do with what's going on up here with this 14-year-old. So Dr. Andrew Clark, forensic psychiatrist, evaluated Carly Gregg. This is important information. Let's take a listen.
She also reported that she began hearing voices relatively early in her life. You know, again, the ages 6 to 9, that she began hearing a voice. It was a male voice, unfamiliar to her, that would say things like, "You're better than them," things that were sort of elitist in a certain way. She reported that that became a constant, not necessarily bothersome, but kind of a constant thing for her. She also reported that, again, early on, that she began to have this experience of feeling distant from the world, as if she was in a dream. Things were sort of foggy for her in that regard. So that she said was kind of a regular, frequent thing that happened to her, again, in this sort of ages 6 to 9 period. So beginning from around the age of 9 or so, what Carly reported was that she began to feel depressed. That the auditory hallucinations, meaning that she was hearing voices, that those continued, that these experiences of feeling like the world wasn't real continued. And then somewhere between the ages of 9 and 11, the depression continued, and she then began to cut herself. And as I understand it, she'd been cutting herself for about 2 years, so starting around the age of 12, that she would, on a fairly regular basis, make superficial cuts on her thighs as a way to help manage her anxiety and distress. After Carly's parents found out that she was cutting herself and staying up late using this burner phone, I'll say in addition, the other thing that happened around that time was that Carly reported to them that she was feeling depressed and that she thought she needed help as well. So really those three things happened. And in response, Carly's mother sought out both therapy and a medication evaluation. Carly met with a prescriber early in January and was begun on antidepressant medication. So the prescriber at Precise Clinical diagnosed Carly with major depressive disorder, which is the psychiatric term for depression, as well as adjustment disorder, and started the medication Zoloft. So Zoloft is also known as sertraline, which is the generic name. It's an SSRI, specific serotonin reuptake inhibitor medication. It's an antidepressant, and it's widely used in teenagers. And she was given the dose of 25 milligrams. And in February, Carly had a follow-up visit with the clinician from Precise Clinical and reported that the Zoloft wasn't doing very much at that dose, and so the clinician raised the dose from 25 to 50 milligrams. So at the follow-up visit on March 12th with Precise Clinical, she reported feeling numb, and the clinician then changed her medication to one called Lexapro or escitalopram. It's another SSRI medication. The clinician at that point in time on March 12th prescribed 5 milligrams of Lexapro. It's a relatively small dose, and instructed Carly to lower the Zoloft down to 25 milligrams for 10 days and then to stop it. In fact, Carly told me that she just stopped the Zoloft cold turkey, I guess, right? Cold turkey is not quite the right term because she didn't have withdrawal symptoms, but she stopped the Zoloft abruptly on March 12th because she didn't want to take it anymore. And maybe she didn't quite understand the instructions. So starting either on March 12th or maybe the next day, Carly was on only the 5 milligrams of Lexapro. Carly reported to me that on March 19th, the day of the incident, she woke up grumpy and irritable and couldn't pay attention in school. I think Carly was struggling with a significant mood disorder. She had reported to her clinician that she was depressed. They had diagnosed her with depression. They were treating her with depression. It wasn't very effective at that point in time. But in addition, I asked Carly about what is called hypomania. There's a condition called bipolar 2, in which an individual suffers from depressed mood, but also at times a hypomanic mood. And the hypomanic mood is not the problem, the depressed mood is the problem. But it makes a difference because when you treat bipolar 2 with an antidepressant medication, you often can make things worse. Either nothing gets better, or you can make someone worse because you can drive them into a manic state. My understanding is that her biological father has been diagnosed and treated with bipolar disorder. And bipolar disorder is a highly heritable condition, meaning if you have a parent that has it, you're at much increased risk of having it yourself. I asked her to estimate over the last 5 years, how much of your time have you spent in any state? What she said to me was, over the last 5 years, she thought about 60% of her time in a depressed state, about 20% of her time in a hypomanic state, and about 20% of her time in a normal mood state. So I gave her the diagnosis of bipolar 2.
A lot of information there. I mean, a lot of information, which brings me to my next question, and it's about what's going on with Carly here. How serious was Carly's mental illness? How bad was this? Let me bring in my experts. Joining me tonight, clinical and forensic neuropsychologist, Dr. Judy Ho, and child forensic psychologist, Dr. Daniel Bober. Thank you both for being here. Dr. Judy Ho, I'll begin with you. From your perspective, how serious is Carly's mental illness based upon what we're learning here?
Well, based upon what we're learning, Vinnie, I think that bipolar disorder may be part of the picture, but bipolar 2 generally is not associated with psychosis, with hearing voices. So either that is a completely different dimension of her clinical condition, a completely different diagnosis, or perhaps she has bipolar disorder 1 with psychotic features. That would be the more severe form of this mood disorder, where when somebody is in a more severe depressed or severe manic state, they also have hallucinations and delusions, and sometimes they act on them and in that sense can harm other people in the process.
Dr. Bober, let me ask you about the medications first. What we heard is on Zoloft, 25 milligrams up to 50 milligrams. She's feeling numb. Switch her to Lexapro a week before the shooting, and she just stops the Zoloft and is on 5 milligrams of Lexapro. You heard the diagnosis from the forensic psychiatrist. What are your thoughts about the impact, if any, that these medications can potentially have?
Well, Vinnie, I think the issue is that if someone is bipolar or they're on the bipolar spectrum, you wouldn't give them an antidepressant because that could, in fact, make it worse. That could precipitate a manic episode or increase the risk of psychosis. And your other guest is correct. You don't typically see psychotic symptoms in bipolar type 2. So if, in fact, there was an underlying bipolarity here, which would be a high index of suspicion given bipolar disorder in the family, you would not prescribe an antidepressant by itself. You would add an antipsychotic in there or some other mood stabilizer. So it is concerning that the medications may have actually exacerbated the problem.
Now, let's take a listen to more of Dr. Andrew Clark here talking about some of the journal entries that Carly Gregg was making.
Writing on March 12th, Tuesday, she writes, "I think I had a psychotic break earlier. The whole ordeal was quite silly. I actually spoke with one of the voices in my head. Well, I didn't hear them until earlier today, but I only do then. My particular friend and I were practically screaming, bloodthirstily and ravenously. Thank God, physical confrontation was not, and I think it's fruitively, possible. I sound crazy." And then she goes on to say, "I need to get back into the habit of journaling. That think it's good. I haven't quite decided if I'll bring this stupid thing to Mrs. Kirk, her therapist, tomorrow, but I can't decide!" Exclamation mark.
Okay, Dr. Judy Ho, what do you think of her journaling here?
Well, it sounds like she's trying to find an answer to why she thinks the way she does and why she feels different from other people. And obviously, journaling is a great therapeutic technique for many people. A lot of therapists will encourage journaling so that you can examine your thoughts and understand what your thoughts are. I think that the concern is oftentimes when somebody does have a psychotic episode, sometimes the voices are saying, well, don't share this information with your doctors or don't listen to your doctors. They're just trying to kill you, right? So we have no idea the kind of voices that we're talking to her, what they were saying. There could be all kinds of different messages in a psychotic episode. So I think that maybe some of this information could have been helpful to the people who were trying to treat her, but perhaps she didn't bring it to them and they had no idea that she was contending with such severe forms of psychosis.
Dr. Bober, when we talk about a psychotic episode, so if someone is in the midst of one, do they know what they're doing? Are they controlling what they're doing?
Well, that's a very good question, especially in this particular case, because we know that Mississippi uses the McNaughton standard when it comes to the insanity defense. And what we're looking at is whether the defendant suffered from a mental illness, did they understand or not understand the nature and quality of their acts, or did they not know the difference between right and wrong? So not everyone that is psychotic is legally insane, but there are certainly people that are insane that are also psychotic.
So how do you make that determination? How do you get to the bottom of what's going on? Does it have to come from her, or do you look at the other things that are happening around the time, Dr. Bober?
So you look at the historical information. If she's been suffering from mental illness for years, what type of mental illness was that? What kind of symptoms was she having? What were her contacts during the days, hours, and minutes leading up to the event? We use this information along with the clinical examination to try to recreate her state of mind at the time of the offense.
And Dr. Judy Ho, this is not an easy one to peel back the layers, but it is one where, according to her stepfather, this is all coming out of left field.
Right, and that's very interesting that the stepfather who was living with her, who was essentially her acting father at this time in her life, thought that this was a complete surprise, thought that this was so out of norm for her. And clearly they knew that she was suffering from a mood condition because she was under antidepressant treatment, which, as Dr. Bober already mentioned, could have been the wrong treatment for her if she has something on the bipolar spectrum. But this also causes me to consider whether or not sometimes people do have such an adverse reaction to the wrong medication that all of a sudden they're acting out, they're more impulsive, and it really wasn't her behavior pattern before. Or, of course, there's the third possibility, which is that she just kept her psychotic thoughts so hidden, her delusions, her hallucinations so hidden that nobody really knew what she was thinking because she just all kept it to herself.
Okay, thank goodness my experts are staying with us. Still to come, why did Carly run?
The Court TV podcast will return.
I could immediately tell that something was bad wrong with Carly. Just the screaming, her eyes were just huge. She looked like she was terrified.
Have you ever heard Carly scream like that before?
No.
Have you ever seen Carly look as terrified as she did on March 19th before?
No.
Would Carly have any reason to run from you?
No.
Vivid description from Heath Smylie about the day that he was shot by his stepdaughter, the same day that she shot and killed his wife, Carly, shooting and killing her mother. The big question is what's going on in her mind, and we've got the analysis of the forensic psychiatrist, but how about the actions and what she did that day? Let's take a look at more home security video. We've got before and after the shooting. We begin here before, as the garage opens. Here she is coming home with her mother. And everything appears pretty normal. Then she goes back to the car to get something, and then she goes back into the house. And it's when she goes back into the house that the shooting occurs. The question is, what was she retrieving in the car? Then, after shooting her mother, she texts her father, and then her father pulls up. He's in that blue pickup in the far ground here of this video. And he's responding because he received a text message that came from his wife's phone. But we saw in the video that it was Carly who messaged her stepfather pretending to be her mother to find out when he was coming home and to have him return. Then she shoots him, they're screaming, and you see from the garage Carly run away, the friend she invited over running away with her. Which brings me to my next question, because you have to evaluate all of the conduct here. And this is, why did Carly run? Why did Carly run? Let's bring back in our experts, clinical and forensic neuropsychologist Dr. Judy Ho and child forensic psychiatrist Dr. Daniel Bober. Dr. Bober, you know, I'm a former prosecutor. I see that action. I say, I'm going to argue she knew she ran because she knew what she did was wrong, right? She knew she had done something that she wasn't supposed to do. That's why she ran. But looking at it, understanding everything that we know about the medications and the diagnosis, what are your thoughts about why she ran in that moment?
So as a prosecutor, you look at something like this and you think consciousness of guilt, as you said. But as Dr. Ho said before, there may have been something going on in her mind. She may have been suffering from some sort of paranoid delusion or grandiose delusion. Any number of things could have been going on, but maybe in her mind it was something that she needed to do, or she could have just been scared. But there are other alternative explanations besides the fact that she knew she was guilty and she ran, especially given the context of her mental illness.
Dr. Judy Ho, looking at everything that we're learning in this case, and she's also there at that moment because after she shoots her mother, she invites her friend over. Her friend is with her. She sends the friend, I think, into the backyard when the stepfather comes home. Then there's another shooting. Then they run off together. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think that just based on what we know and what we're hearing so far, Carly really wasn't in her right mind. She may have known right from wrong, meaning that she knows on some level that shooting somebody and killing them is wrong. But who would do that? Who would shoot their mother and then invite a friend over? You know, if they were really in their right mind and knew what the true consequences are of what she did. And as Dr. Bober mentioned already, sometimes in certain types of delusions, you actually think that you're doing something as a crusade that is supposed to be the right thing to do, or your voices are commanding you to do it, right? It's not necessarily something that you want to do. And also sometimes your voices are saying, everybody is against you, and no matter what anyone says, you have to run away from them. Nobody loves you, right? So when somebody's in that kind of state, these voices are overwhelming. I have heard patients tell me that there'll be multiple voices talking to them at once, trying to get a word in. They can't even go to sleep because the voices don't stop. And then over the course of time, more and more voices join in the chorus. So it can be really intense. And I just think that inviting a friend over just shows that there was something that wasn't right with her state of mind in that particular moment.
And Dr. Bober, the video we were watching as Dr. Judy Ho was speaking was the arrest when she's caught. And there's a calmness to this that all of us have noticed. How significant is that part of what has happened here?
Well, Vinnie, I just want to echo the sentiments of something that Dr. Ho said. We all remember the Andrea Yates case where Andrea Yates in Texas drowned her 5 children. She knew that she was drowning her children, but in her mind, she believed that she was saving them from an eternity in hell. So she was suffering from hyper-religious and paranoid delusions. So in a sense, she knew what she was doing was wrong, but she was doing it for a psychotic reason. So this is something that can apply in this case. As far as the arrest is concerned, maybe she was relieved. Maybe she finally felt that she was going to get some help, that she was finally safe if she was under the influence of this psychosis.
Dr. Judy Ho, we have about 25 seconds left here. Long term, Carly Gregg, regardless of what happens in her legal issues, what do you see her having any sort of a future?
If she has the right diagnosis and the right treatment, she can absolutely have a good future and be a productive citizen. And I really hope that she has a chance to really get to the bottom of whatever has been plaguing her and to get the right treatment for it.
I want to thank you. So great to have my experts with me, Dr. Judy Ho, Dr. Daniel Bober. I appreciate it so much. We'll speak again. Only Carly Gregg truly knows what motivated the deadly shooting. That is, if she can even fully comprehend it herself. But in our system of justice, the legal test for insanity is understanding right from wrong. And when you hide a weapon from the camera the way she did and flee the scene of a shooting, it becomes very difficult to convince a jury that you are not guilty by reason of insanity. I'm Vinnie Politan. We'll keep digging for answers as the investigation continues. There you have it. If you want to see more in-depth reporting on the latest true crime stories, you can see me every weeknight, 8 p.m. Eastern on Closing Arguments. Thank you so much for downloading. And as always, please don't forget to hug the kids.
This podcast is a production of Court TV. Go to CourtTV.com for more content, trials on demand, and to find out how to watch Court TV in your area.